like 2 weeks?
Yeah.
2 weeks too long. We had things pop up. You know how life goes. But we're so excited to be back. We hope all you guys are staying safe and being healthy. Nothing but prayers out to you guys. So we wanted to jump on here because obviously it's been 2 weeks too long. Another topic. And we're thinking like, when we come up with these topics, we're like, okay, what's important to us, what's important out there. And then I was just thinking like the duh moment. I was like, okay, you're brown, I'm white. Cultural differences, you know. I have seen so many different variations of people and parents and grandparents and hold on.
Cultural.
Yeah, he always likes to butt in. Where like dating somebody of a different race was a big deal, where like it was just like really frowned upon, and in some culture or in some families that's still a thing. But before I let you tap in with your thought, hold it. It's like holding his breath over there. Personal preference, I actually prefer dating men of a different race because I love the variation, the culture, the differences of just how things are done, the thought process, like how your upbringing is, the emotional standpoint. There's a lot of different things. So before we dive into that, what do you need to say?
I was just going to say, I don't know if you guys know this, but she's white and I'm brown.
White.
That's a trip. No, what's
crazy?
What's crazy is that for me at least, I've actually I think Molly's my first
white girl.
Yeah, but then also is that anything outside of Latina for the most part, because I was always attracted to Latinas, and it's not unnormal for somebody of a particular race who's been constantly infused with nothing but their race inside of their own culture or their own upbringing to be attracted to said race, because it's familiar, it's easy. You guys come from the same background, like jokes, language, banter, foods, music, a lot of things, and it's not a bad thing it's not a bad thing at all. If you're attracted to somebody, most likely it's going to be for a good reason. But one of the things that was interesting when dating Molly is the kind of cultural differences.
When dating, still dating.
Wait, what?
You said when dating, You're still dating.
Yeah.
It's alright, sorry, keep going.
That's a white thing. So, thinking about it, like there was a lot of communication. Like one of the things for me at least, and I kind of want to build this live on this topic, is the communication aspect. Now I've gotten to know a lot about Molly just through communication, but it also kind of taught me a lot from a cultural standpoint in the way that she communicates and tells me things, and it's very fascinating. Babe, do you wanna touch up on?
Ooh, man, communication. We could touch on that for like ever. A huge difference, but like that could just be a personality thing with this guy. Like, you ever have that person that you're telling them something, they're like, Wait, what do you mean? Wait, what? Huh? Like, they're hearing you, but they're not listening to you. And his brother does the same thing. So, like, that could just be, like, a guy thing, which I really think it is.
Yeah.
And by no means, I want to preface this, we are not digging on any race. We're not smashing and dashing. Like, we're not trying to, like, hate on any race. Like, we're really not. But there are true stereotypes. So, if you get triggered during this, these are just stereotypes that we've come across, and we're not digging and trying to be, like, racist towards, white people, black people, I'm just putting that out there because I know some people that really think that that's a thing. So at the end of the day, it is for other people, not for us. We're just fully coming to you as talking about the diversity of, being white, being brown.
Yeah.
But the communication standpoint, let's just get back on that. So for example, like, I grew up in a household, and my dad will probably jump on this at some point, where I remember him at a very young age where he would go yell at the top of the stairs, "We're leaving in 15 minutes, when really we didn't need to leave for another 30. But he's like, we got to be out the door 15 minutes early before, like, so we can be on time, right? We need to arrive 15 minutes early, that's on time, and that's how I always live by. It's like, if I'm 15, even 30 minutes early, like, I'm on time. Mm-hmm. But if I was 5 minutes early, or even at the time whenever something started, I was late. And so, Dad, I love you, but man, that made me such a pain in the because I was just like, hurry, let's go. But I really appreciated that, what do you want to call it? I just really appreciate that for my dad because, the timeliness, because at the end of the day, what it taught me once I finally, in my late 20s, I was like, okay, you know what? I don't have to be 15 minutes early, even 30 minutes early. 5 is okay, or on time is good. And even from a business standpoint, when I call people, if it's 3 p.m., I call them at 3 p.m., they're like, oh my gosh, you called on time. I was like, yeah. They're like, wow, that's great. Thank you. I was like, that's how it should be. So I'm grateful for my dad instilling that in me of like 15 minutes, we gotta go. Like I remember yelling at all of us and I'm like, Dad, like we still have time. And then I was like, you know what? Okay, let's do it. Being early is always good. But I noticed that, in my culture, my house, that was like, the bar. Like we had to do that. Yikes. What was that for you?
So I run on Mexican time. Now, for any of you guys know, other known as CPT, Color People Time, is that there's a certain threshold that you have when somebody gives you a time frame. Also, we believe in being fashionably late. Now, what that means is that you say, typical Mexican party, right? You say it starts at 5, it really doesn't start until like 7 or 8. And so that's just like kind of like your window. It's just like if you arrive past 8, you're just late. Like that's just not even okay.
That's painful
it's like
for me.
Quinceañeras, we got weddings, we got birthday parties, graduations. If you're late past like 2 hours, then you're just late. And so she said, Randy said, I can't stand to be late.
Same.
I'm sorry, Randy. I'm Mexican. Me and time just don't agree.
We're working on this. Like, it's a cultural thing. I used to be like, that's an excuse. So. How can you not look at a clock?
Very much so.
How can you not look at a clock? He has one on his wrist. He has one on his phone. How do you not look at a clock? But what I realized, and babe, I'm sorry to cut you off.
It's okay.
What I realized is I used to I still do get really frustrated because, like Randy said, can't stand being late. Susanna says if you arrive early, then you're helping set up if you're Mexican. Like, it used to get me, like, really, really, really mad until I understand, like, okay, like, you gotta give somebody a chance to, like, shift habits and change because he's used to, okay, I gotta be there at 9 o'clock. He'll show up at 9:15 and he's cool. Like, he'll walk out the door at, like, 9 or whatever, like, too late. And I'm like, it's driving me insane. So it's something that we're working on because I'm like, word is bond. If you're there, if you say 8:30, you gotta be there at 8:30. He's like, it's fine. But that's just the culture that he was in. And everybody, the CPT time, it's like they're just used to. Oh my gosh, Jesse, you're hilarious. They're just used to, just showing up late, and then that's okay. For me, I'm used to showing up early. How can I help? How can I set up? I'm staying late. How can I clean up? How can I do that? Like, that's what my parents instilled in me. Yeah, I'm not saying you're not a hard worker. You don't do that. But you show up.
I'm Mexican. It's in my blood to be.
And again, this is supposed to be funny, you guys. We're just like poking.
And honestly, we kind of want to make it an open conversation. Jesse, love you so much. That's amazing. You're just a phenomenal human being. I appreciate you.
Wait, Susanna says the only place Mexicans are early is to work.
That's a fact. So one of the things that Molly has taught me, is that GQ. Oh my gosh.
Tom, that's your big Tom.
I love
Keep
Tom.
going.
Tom, you have my heart, friend. So one of the things that Molly has taught me is wild punctuation. It's crazy. If we have like a date night, or if we're going to like even my brother's house, I go to my brother's house.
3 floors down.
3 floors down. And if she says, let's go, and we have to be there at 9:30, I'm going to my brother's at 9:20 or 9:30 on the dot. Me and my brother, I'll be there 30 minutes late, and he won't even bat an eye. That's just the way we. So also too is that kind of navigating culture and things like that it's interesting because there's a certain comfortability, familiarity, if you will, to where when you're familiar with somebody. And, it kind of just is ingrained in you. You inevitably think that that's okay across the board. When I started, building my business, I realized that, I actually had to step up my game in terms of communication, in terms of
Things being on time?
Yeah, being on time, punctuation. So, like, there's a lot of different things. She said, Molly, you took your breath. So, there's a couple different things that come into play. And so, this whole conversation isn't just relational. It's also very interpersonal, whether that's business, whether that's anything, right? people conducting business that are from different cultures often have friction, whether it's tonality in the way they come off, whether it's mannerisms, things like that. So one of the things that I think I want to build this conversation off of on my end is communication. One of the things that I've learned with being with Molly and soon to just be married to her, and I'm making that very loud and proud.
I was kind of nervous.
So one of the things that I've learned a lot is being open in communication, because typically when we would have like little like feuds or disagreements or things like that, and a button or a trigger was initiated, then more often than not, she would be the one to kind of like, what would you do in that scenario, babe?
World War III. I'm just kidding. All I see is a mushroom cloud.
She said you said you're forgiving me, man.
Oh, wait.
Facts.
Okay, stop reading the comments. Get back to your point.
No. I was saying, is just like whenever we would run into like a feud, there was a little bit of friction there. What would happen?
I would tell you how I felt.
Yeah.
I see where you're going. Okay, so I would tell him how I felt right off the bat, because what I used to do is I would harbor it in. I would get offended right off the bat. And when you become offended, if you don't know the power of offense, read the book, The Bait of Satan. I promise you that will change the game for you. I read the first 3 pages, got me hooked, and it was a game changer, because being offended is a sin because of all the things that happen when you're offended. Anger, resentment, bitterness, like just all these things. Mm-hmm. So before, I'm just giving them some context, I used to be super offended. I would take it in. I wouldn't tell them. I would just deal with it on my own, bottle it up, move on, come back like nothing was wrong. And when I realized that just made me a really like unresolved person, and it didn't make me happy. It didn't help that person if I didn't like something, or they could maybe shift and learn something, because there's gonna be times where I tell Johnny things where like it stings, and I mean it in the best way possible, but it's gonna sting. It's not gonna feel good, but I tell him because I love him and I want him to learn how I'm feeling or how to navigate things, because if I don't, then how's he gonna get to know the real me?
True.
So what I was doing is I was not allowing people to get to know the real me, because I was bottling it in, trying to be Mrs. Perfect. But now, what Johnny's getting to, back to the point, I wanted to give you context, because it's been a long road. It's been a long road. Is if he does something I don't like, I take it upon myself, probably the first relationship ever, actually, that I take it upon myself to tell him right then and there. And there's sometimes that he doesn't want to hear it if we're in the, like, if he's upset, like, I'll kind of poke and prod and, like, get him to, like, talk, right? Because I want him to, like, open up, because you are your worst enemy, where the thoughts that loom around up here as to how angry and mad and hurt you are, that's going to distract you from the inside out. So instead of me bottling that in, instead of letting Johnny bottle that in, I'm like, hey, let's talk about it. So to get to your point, to let you finish, I would just come to you and I say, hey, this is the problem, or this is how I feel. We need to address it right now, because if we wait till later, then a whole bunch of other crap's going to come up later that had nothing to do with that original argument.
Yeah, I just want to point this out too, is that for anybody that's watching, and maybe you're in whether you're in a business relationship, whether you're in a personal relationship with somebody that you love, the title of this video is Cultural Differences. Now, mind you, there are things that are cross-cultural. There are things that are just towards the person's upbringing. Me being Mexican, like I'm a little bit, there's a lot. I wish I can go over it, but there's a lot. And so there are things that are cultural, but then there's also things that could be developed in terms of habits, behavioral patterns, and things like that. So not everything has to just be contingent upon your cultural upbringing. That actually, I did a study, and that's actually easier to change than behavioral modifications. Now, one of the things that I've realized, and forgive me if I press any buttons, I do mean to be respectful to anybody in any race, but I noticed that, primarily with white people, especially in business, there's a little bit of lack of emotional transparency at times. And so typically when there's an issue, it's very held in, and it's very like, no, everything's fine, it's okay, I got it. And whereas, you ask like somebody like me or like, somebody that's Mexican, you'd be like, hey, is you okay? You're like, actually, no, it's not. Here, let me tell you, you got time? And so like there's more emotional transparency. It's just like, careful what you ask, like, are you okay, right? Because, typically, depending on who they are, they actually might tell you what's wrong. But one of the things that I've noticed with malls is that whenever we would run into an argument or friction or, there was something unsettling, tension was so, rough, you can cut it with a knife, is that when I know that something's on her mind, more often than not, I'll ask her what's wrong. And I don't know if she's ever been in relationships, where it's been so emotionally, like, just tucked in to where there was a lack of transparency or vulnerability. So whenever she tells me I'm fine, I automatically know that that's international women's language for I'm not okay, right? And so with that being said, I kind of dig a little deeper and I'm like, hey, is everything okay? What's the matter? And I have to ask like maybe sometimes 2 to 3 times on average before she actually tells me what's wrong. Now, there's a tipping point because whenever I ask too much, she'll get pissed off. Now, if I act like I don't care, then it just seems just like that. I don't care. That's never a good place to be in.
Such an easy spot we put them in. Am I saying? I'm saying.
And so if she says, babe, I just want to be left alone right now, I'm totally cool with that. It's not my favorite answer, but more often than not, if I ask too much, again, it's just going to be bad. So I'm like, okay, I asked about 2 or 3 times, and so now I can at least know that when she's ready, on her timing, she's going to be ready to tell me and be in an emotionally comforting state to be able to communicate to me with clarity what it is that she wants to what she wants to communicate to me, because now she's in a better state. Now with me, how have I been?
Did you see how I did that? How have I been? Before I answer that, I want to answer some of these comments real quick. We got Tammy that says, I was raised raised by Canadian parents. We fight with passion, and that's okay. Right. Get it out. That's right. I love it.
That's Latino culture also.
And then Susanna says, my wife grew up American, but she's Mexican that can't speak Spanish. She can't either. Oh my gosh, too funny.
No hablo Mexicano.
So she was very different from me, the white-looking Mexican that speaks Spanish. She's the one that keeps stuff in. I'm the one that would stop everything and demand to speak. I had no problems telling her how I felt. And then Dominic says, great stuff. Thank you both for your candor. Yeah, no, so
this is great.
Susanna, like you and your wife. So I've been on both sides of the coin where I just didn't want people to see that I was hurting or I was mad or I was upset or emotional or whatever, because I wanted to look like I had it all together. But guess what that also did? It made me not human, and it made me very like angry on the inside. So the being able to get it out, you guys, ladies, men, especially, I'm just going to say it, of the white culture, I don't know what it is about a culture thing where we have to look so, perfect and we have it all together, because we don't. Because I know, a ton of people, white people that are in therapy that need to talk to somebody because they haven't got out their stuff. I'm not saying just white people need therapy. I mean, a lot of people do. But what I'm saying as an example is that you can legitimately, just, hey, Johnny, I have an issue, or I have this, I have that. And yeah, is it uncomfortable sometimes? It is. And I've been in relationships where I didn't feel comfortable telling that person that, because I didn't want them to think anything was wrong, because I wanted it to work and I didn't want to start over. But what ended up happening? It ended up fizzling out. It didn't work. So with Johnny, what I've noticed, the difference is that I'll go to him and be like, hey, we got an issue. We need to talk about it. I don't want to wait. And I would just push it on him even when he wasn't ready. So there was times where he would push back on me and said, hey, I'm not ready. And I'm just like, what do you mean you're not ready? We're going to talk about this right now. Because if I want something, I'm going to go get it until, I'm going to get it, right? But this is for good emotional release, because if you start coming up with all these stories as to all this stuff that's not even true in your head, it makes it 10 times worse.
Yeah.
So with Johnny, I remember there was one instance where we got into it and we're driving in the car and he didn't want to talk and I kept pushing, and I was like, I don't care that you don't want to talk, we're going to push. And he's like, no, stop. And I was like, no, we're going to push, because I could tell he's starting to make up stuff in his head that wasn't true. But what I learned is that sometimes people really do need space. And then you got to come from the space, you got to come from the place of okay, do you really want that space? I really want to talk it out right now, because while it's fresh, We're not going to let all this other stuff of what may have happened in the past creep up and just pile on and make this huge dumping pile of ish when it should have been dealt with a long time ago. So I noticed with him that he's been, we talked about this when we first started dating, that we both are very like strong, independent people where we'll just internalize things and not really ask people for help or like go to them for, you know, can you listen to me? We'll just deal with it on our own. And he wasn't used to that when I came in the picture, especially in being as assertive as I am and just being like, no, we don't talk about this. Like, we don't talk about this right now because I'm not trying to have you like, you know, we're just going to do it right now.
Facts.
And so he wasn't used to that, but now he's getting a lot better at just like opening up and just like, you know, sharing, because here's the thing, that's a cultural difference. As like, I used to be buttoned up, now I'm not. He's still buttoned up, now he's opening up. Mm-hmm. But then you also have to be able to understand when somebody really does need the time or somebody really does need to be pushed. And sometimes you're going to push the wrong button, and that's okay. But it's, you know, coming from a place like, I want to learn. I want to know why you have to think about it, or I want to know why you feel this way. And that communication, which is more like that, what lies beneath, like you got to dig for that kind of stuff. And that's just being aware and just being intuitive as to like, okay, I know something's eating you up. I don't want you to just sit there and just soak in it. But what's really triggering you right now? Was it really what I said, or did something happen in your past that I triggered you? Blah, blah, blah. And it doesn't matter what culture you are. There's things that happen in your past that will trigger you today, tomorrow, 10 years from now, and you don't even know it. And you got to be able to sit in a place personally and be like, oh, wow, what really did trigger me? What really was that trigger? Was it something my mom did when I was a child, or my grandma did, or my aunt did, or my brother did, sister did? You really got to dig on that.
I kind of want to touch up on a point, and this kind of just rung in my heart. Anybody that's watching this, whether it's current or, you know, recorded, whatever, is that there's going to be a lot of times where your style of communication and understanding of other people is heavily contingent upon how you were raised. Because it's just like, for instance, if there's a problem that needs to be addressed and I'm emotionally distressed, she's emotionally distressed, and there were times in our past where we weren't given like a free space to be vulnerable, and it was almost kind of counted against us. It's like, like let's say if you open up, you know, and you crawl out of your shell, and then like all of a sudden somebody's like, why are you complaining so much? Just get over it. You know, that kind of emotional callus eventually builds up to where eventually your heart just kind of becomes hard, and it sucks. And that will definitely drip into your future relationships and then eventually count against you, because now you no longer enjoy the art of communicating. And it is very much an art. I implore anybody and everyone after watching this, you know, whether it's live, now start communicating more. I guarantee you, whether it's complimenting people, whether it's, you know, if somebody asks you, hey, how's your day going? Express a little bit more. Be overly communicative, because there's a certain art to communication that I think a lot of people negate, because a lot of people feel closed in, because more often than not when people say, hey, how's your day going? It's a very superficial, low level, you know, kind of question that doesn't really express genuine interest. It's more of just a filler statement to a soft introduction. And so start expressing more. And even more so, if you're in a relationship right now, tell your significant other how your day was. To talk about things that go a little bit deeper than just shallow conversation. It really does help. That's one of the and again, going back to referencing to cultural backgrounds. I'm Latino, I talk, I'm very expressive. And I'm very like kind of theatrical at times. If somebody asks me how my day was, I'm going to tell you what it is. If you don't like it, well then, you know, stop, you know, don't ask me. You know, I'm going to tell you how I'm doing. But then also with my mother, I was very overly communicative. I told her how I felt. I told her my emotional state. I told her my spiritual state, my mental state. So things like that definitely trickle down into your relationship. So if you haven't had that growing up, I would implore you to take action now in how it is that you communicate with other people. You know, be expressive, be open, you know, exercise that, those vocal, emotional, mental, spiritual muscles, you know. I was going to say something else, but
Think about it. I'm going to go through the comments, and this may trigger you. My dad said the shelf behind us is not level. It is, Dad. I saw it yesterday when he put it up. That's so rude. Oh, my gosh. Okay, let me go through these comments. You guys have been leaving lots of really great comments. Okay, so Crystal C says, you don't always need to have it all together. It's too stressful, too much work to put on a front. I've learned from being married for 20 years, space is key. Love them.
Hold the phone.
And then, hold on, let me read these before you do the level and prove my dad wrong. Susanna says, my wife is not used to getting together with family every single weekend to have a barbecue and a drink.
Slightly.
Okay, sorry. All right, so men are going to be men. My dad says his shelf isn't level. In the middle, it's level. It's the angle of the camera, Dad. Anyways, you guys are ridiculous. Okay, back to Susanna. So,
I love it.
She says, my wife is not used to getting together all the time for every weekend, barbecues, drinks, or whatever. I'm like, why not? She comes from one sibling family, doesn't do much, where I'm from a 6+ sibling family and does everything together. That actually is a huge cultural difference that I noticed with Johnny, is that like going into like his dad, right? His father invited us over to like a barbecue. They invited us to a Thanksgiving and Christmas.
That was true.
Massive. So big. And then they're like, they have like get-togethers like every weekend.
Yeah.
We went to a funeral and that was huge. And the party after was massive. And it was just like, oh, like
Latinos
it just all the time. Let's get together. Let's party. And I'm like, whoa, like
literally.
But I like that though. I like that because that part of culture is amazing to me. It's like, get together, let's have fun. But what I don't like, this goes for any culture, I actually hate, and I don't hate very many things, I hate surface level conversations. Like, if you're just going to be like, how's the weather? And, how's your job going? But, like, I mean, you can dig a little in the job part, but, like, there's these surface level conversations. You know what they are. And I'm just like, I'd rather watch paint dry. Like, skip the heartache. I'd rather go, like, talk to somebody else that wants to dig a little. We'll get there. I'm not done yet. We'll get there. So, now I just lost track. No,
really?
You're fine. I just lost track, but that's okay. Okay, Crystal says, I've also learned that when you want to talk at the moment frustrates it can lead to more frustration.
That's a fact.
She also says, you live what you learn, but I don't think that was complete. Tammy says, it's 50-50 relationship and respect each other and protect each other. You both are awesome. Thank you. Awesome. Crystal says, I'm Latina and passion runs deep. Crybaby moments, all the time. Oh my gosh, you're funny. My dad says it's just breaking the ice with the level shelf. Dad, are you going to talk in the conversation? You just keep talking about the shelf.
I love it.
Oh my gosh, you're so funny. Okay, and then Susanna says, before we get back to the point, I'm used to cooking for a big crowd. My wife says you don't have to cook for a whole neighborhood. Oh, I got a point on that. And you can just cook for 4 people. I'm like, I don't need that negativity in my life.
You don't have to cook.
Johnny's the same way. He'll invite people in. And, like, he will be like, let me make a latte, like a super fancy latte with his, like, coffee machine. Let me bake cookies. Let me get out and make some, like, whatever. And I remember one time when we just started quarantine, and we didn't know how long this was going to last and if grocery stores were going to close. And he's inviting people in, and he's, like, giving them our food. And I'm like, babe, we're in quarantine. Like, you can't just be giving people the food. Like, we don't know when this is gonna like be over. And so he's just like, come on, let's eat. And like this dude for like 2 weeks straight will be making cookies every single day.
I'm being hospitable with our survival.
And I'm like, wait a second. Like then now now I'm like, okay, Molly, you're coming from lack. Okay, you're coming from lack. You need to be able to like share. But I'm just like, yo, like part of me's like, those are my cookies. Well, I mean, you didn't make them for me. You made them for complete strangers.
For me, I just think I think it's a very Latin thing too. You go to any Latin's house for the most part, and I'm talking about like old school, like where you got nanas or I got my grandma Pipa, like literally got up every morning. You know, traditional Mexican household, right? You got like 10 members in like 1,000 square foot home. And so, you know, I remember my grandmother every morning, she would cook whatever, whether it's papas and chorizo, whether it's fresh tortillas, whether it's anything, pozole, whatever, she would be there. There's a huge sense of hospitality, especially within the Latin culture, just because we like to give, we like to feel like needed in that kind of department, but then also it kind of brings us together, so it's kind of like a nice thing. So I like to be hospitable when I can, and I just like to, put on for people. If I can make you something that you like, then I'm most likely going to make you that thing, whether it's coffee, whether it's cookies, pie,
anything in the fridge, anything you whip up. Now I kind of want to end it on this because this was funny. It got brought up, and then you can say whatever ending remarks you
said
have.
Don't get in the toilet.
True.
Facts.
If you do, you got to charge them.
Facts.
So one last thing that was
I price gouge for that.
One last thing that was really funny that I wanted to mention that kind of like blew my mind. And shout out to my parents, Bob and Christy. I know my dad's on here judging the wall behind us, but Dad, if you're listening,
It's pretty lovely.
If you're listening, one thing that I love that my parents instilled in me is, so Johnny's brother and sister-in-law moved out of their old apartment, and then they had a loft in downtown LA that we used for business stuff that we had to move out back-to-back weekends. 18 hour 2 weekends ago to move out of their apartment, and 12 hours this past Saturday to move out. And every single time we had to show up to move some more, and they're like, hey, be there at 11. I'm there at 10:59. They're like, dang, you're here on time. And I'm like, yeah. Or Johnny would be like, check and see if they're even up before you go down there. And I'm just like, okay, well, they said 11, so it's 11, And so I'd show up on time, or I was always available. I was always like, hey, let me help you. How can I help? That's it. They were like, man, you white people are so reliable. We can depend on you for anything. But Johnny, nope, cut him out. If he shows up even an hour late, okay.
If you make appointments with Mexicans, you kind of have to have about 3 to 5 follow-up calls just to make sure.
Not on my watch. Sure. We're going down to 1, even if that. It's like, you say 9, it better be 9, otherwise you're going to get an earful. But that's just me. I think punctuality and being a good person of your word is important. So we're working on it, It's cool. But this was a really good live. A lot of great interaction, a lot of good laughs, and a lot of good truth, It was
Keep
good stuff.
It coming. Anything that you guys experience inevitably helps us.
Yeah.
Which then inevitably helps everyone else that watches this.
That's right.
And so, Mexicans don't RSVP. That is such a fact.
How are you supposed to plan?
We show up whenever we find it most opportune. That's why you both are perfect. Honestly, Tammy, I so appreciate that. Unreal.
Thanks.
We're before. We're pretty already good together, but then she balances me out in a lot of different areas of my life.
Vice versa.
I didn't think was necessary.
Until now.
And also too, I kind of want to elaborate this on too, is that I felt a strong sense to touch on this is just even, when it comes to balancing out the scale on a cultural aspect, is that even the way we communicate, but then even more so the way we communicate through affection, right? It was very interesting because when, again, Molly being the first woman that I've dated that's white, me dating Latinas, affection was never really an issue in terms of, and I'm not talking sexual. I'm talking very just passionate, just very touching, caressing, kissing the hands, hand holding, arms, cuddling, anything, the whole 9, right? Is that I realized that was one thing that I was able to kind of bring out of her because she was a little bit more naturally reserved, right? And so if you're kind of in a relationship where that's not really showing up, don't count it against them as a cultural thing, not even a behavioral thing. Sometimes it takes 2 to tango. There has to be one party and a reciprocation that has to happen because, again, Molly wasn't used to being in a very affectionate relationships, and that was okay. I just had to work a little harder to kind of bring that out of her because, again, not everybody feels comfortable with that. Me growing up as a kid, I was extremely loved, very loved. I was always had very physically affectionate family members, hugs, fist bumps, whatever. There was always a strong sense of affection, physical touch and things like that. So with that being said, it was interesting to see how Molly kind of interacted with that because at first it actually made her uncomfortable. The hand holdings and the constant kisses and things like that. You may be in a relationship right now where that may be a premium, and if that is, just feel free to exercise that with, and also communicate. That plays a huge part too. You have to be like unbelievably communicative, because when I was with Molly, I was wondering, like, because she wasn't affectionate, I actually took that as a sign of her disinterest in me, which was epic, because that was the complete opposite. But as I started to learn, because that wasn't necessarily her thing, it actually made things a little bit more complicated. So I actually had to communicate, and then she had to reciprocate, and then from there we actually grew from that, because now she understands that I put a premium on physical affection. That's huge. I like hand holding. I like it when she'll creep up behind me and hug me. Those little things are like forever. Like,
hashtag big spoon.
Very much. She's actually taller, and she's actually a little bit stronger than me.
No, I'm not.
She smacks me around a little bit.
No, I don't.
Whenever I need correction.
Oh my gosh, this is terrible.
So she's actually the alpha.
Babe, stop. Okay, back to this point before you got rude. Randy and both my dad said I had baggage, and I was like, I'm gonna pass by that. And then Randy said it, and I'm like, dang it.
Wait, what?
That I had baggage. Why
baggage?
I wasn't affectionate. I just never really I guess I was always in long distance relationships, and it was long distance, so I never saw the person
I
a
checked
whole
in that
lot.
baggage like it was TSA.
But we so you didn't check it very well. Get it? Because they don't check it very well. Okay, anyways. So the whole I had to learn. I had to really learn. But even there's parts where he wants to be super affectionate, and I'm not really into it, but that's his love language. His affections is love language, and even if I'm not I'm like, man, just leave me alone. I'm gonna do my own thing. I'm super independent. I'm like, but that's his love language. You know what I mean? So I'm like, all right, put your whatever aside. This is for him. Mm-hmm. He enjoys it. It's how he feels the most love. So you got to do it. But it's out of I want to, but I also give more than I'm more because I'm just kind of I'm cool, but he wants it, So I do it because I know you love it. But anyways, I think that's good for today, because we could keep going, and
literally we can keep going.
This has been really, really good. So you guys, we love you. We appreciate you, Dad. Thanks for the laughs. Appreciate you. But drop in the comments if you've learned anything, if something stood out to you. Give examples as to what you guys are going through, because again, we all learn from each other. Mm-hmm. If you got a lot of value out of this, we love you too, Tammy. Thank you so much.
You are the bee's knees. We appreciate you so much.
Share this on your story. Share this on your timeline. Tag people who need to hear this, because this is the kind of stuff that you're not gonna just go on Google and just find this anywhere. This is real conversation. Randy and Tammy and other people that I've really appreciated. Susanna, appreciate you for chiming in on this conversation. Same with you, Crystal. Love you guys, and we will see you next week.
Yeah, and also any note is that, again, cultural things could be overcome so long as there's a willingness to be open, to be vulnerable, to love, and for I kind of want to bring this up. I don't know why, but I love the concept of love and respect. It's constantly on my mind, especially in terms of relationships, whether that's personal, public, professional. The 3 P's for anyone who loves alliteration is that there's a constant love and respect. And so I respect Molly in her upbringing. I'm not going to forcefully impose that my way of doing things is inevitably right, and vice versa, right? And so there has to be this sense of love and respect mutually that comes to an agreement as to what you guys are comfortable with. And again, that has to be, you guys have to open that sense of what do I call it? It's kind of like I'm missing the word. Kind of like a judgment-free zone, an open level for pure communication, where you guys can meet in common ground and feel free to throw at each other, kind of like dartboards, but then also be very precise on what it is that you guys are in need of, because that's crucial. I was in need of a lot of things in the very beginning of the stages of our dating, but then as time goes on, I realized that slowly, as I started communicating these things, she was susceptible to being open to them, and even implementing these things, right? Like the hugging, the kissing, the open communication, physical touch, and words of affirmation are my 2 biggest love languages. Anything after that, it's okay, but I place a premium on those 2 things, both predicated on my cultural upbringing, right? And so she was more than happy to adapt that into our relationship to ensure that I felt loved and that she respected my demands. And again, vice versa. I'm constantly improving the way that I communicate and then also arrive and show up on time. And again, I'm not going to be perfect. It's not saying that you have to be perfect, but if there's no mutual level of love and respect, then you guys just aren't going to be able to meet in the middle, and that has to be the case, you know. So for whatever it's worth, I hope you guys got value with this. We try to keep it as 100 with HUNNET, Hunnit. We try to keep it as real as possible on this because again, this is a very real conversation. This is a very real topic, and if you guys found value in this, like, share, comment, let us know what you guys are going through, because that inevitably helps us and inevitably helps everyone else. So we appreciate your guys' input. We appreciate your guys' love. And again, you guys are amazing. And
see you next week.
See you next. Yeah.
Bye.
And again, that's Latin time. So we say 6. It's actually at 6:30.
Nope, it's at 6. Trust me.
Just kidding.
Bye, guys.